often think of understanding reality as, uncovering truths in the light, exploring what's clear and visible. But what if there's a profound, maybe challenging night side to reality, full of concepts many people actively avoid or maybe don't even know exist? What if confronting this shadow isn't just about facing your fears, but actually, well, a necessary step towards a fuller, more complete understanding of consciousness itself? Today, we're daring to look at Kenneth Grant's monumental work, Nightside of Eden, which suggests exactly that.
Yeah, and what's truly intriguing about Grant's approach is how he pulls all this stuff together. I mean, he's drawing on a rich, sometimes controversial tradition, figures like Aleister Crowley, Austin Osman Spare, and he synthesizes this incredibly diverse, often quite obscure information. He presents a coherent view, I'd say, though it's profoundly challenging, a view of these so-called dark mysteries. So our mission today is really to cut through some of that esoteric density. We want to extract the most important nuggets, the key insights. We want you, the listener, to walk away with a clear understanding of what these concepts actually are, their significance within, certain occult traditions, and why they're presented as these essential pathways to a different kind of knowledge, all without feeling hopefully overwhelmed by the sheer intensity of the subject.
Right, that's the goal. And our source material for this deep dive is Kenneth Grant's Nightside of Eden itself. It's really more than just a book. It's seen as a foundational text in modern occultism. It meticulously maps out these really abstract concepts, describes specific entities. It's dense stuff. We've got excerpts from the author's foreword, the table of contents, and a selection of key chapters that really lay out the underlying framework he's building. One of the striking things about this text, even just looking at it, are the plates and sigils. These aren't just illustrations, are they? Grant presents them as actual keys, like anchors, designed to ground these incredibly abstract, sometimes disorienting concepts in a way that's meant to resonate on a deeper level, almost primal.
Exactly. And this brings us right to why this deep dive is relevant, even if you don't consider yourself an occultist at all. Understanding these countercultural, often sort of forbidden perspectives on consciousness and reality, it can offer unique aha moments that give you a distinct lens, a way to examine how different knowledge systems, especially these esoteric ones, try to map not just the human experience, but the entire cosmos. It fundamentally challenges our assumptions about what knowledge even is, and whether maybe true understanding requires venturing beyond the comfortably familiar, into realms some people would definitely prefer to leave untouched.
Okay, so let's pull back that curtain a bit. Let's start with Kenneth Grant himself and his rather audacious intent behind writing Nightside of Eden. In his own author's foreword, Grant makes this particularly bold claim. He says he's revealing too much of the mysteries. He actually states he's lifting the veil of Isis, that classic symbol for hidden spiritual truths, lifting it to an almost unseemly height. So this isn't just about sharing information. It's presented as a deliberate act, almost provocative, designed to expose what has hitherto been occult, i.e. hidden. And he frames this grand unveiling as true gnosis, direct intuitive spiritual knowledge, which he says is of a predominantly psychosexual nature and has now been made available for the first time.
Right. And a key point Grant makes here is his confidence. He really asserts that these dark mysteries aren't impenetrable or unknowable. They are, in fact, understandable, and crucially, they contain their own keys to their understanding. Grant claims the book aims to make formerly operative formulae available, which implies, practical applications for this knowledge, tools for direct spiritual experience, magical work, not just theory. And here's a remarkable claim, especially given the perceived danger of the subject. He states that safeguards are both automatic and foolproof against any misinterpretation of these secrets, which suggests some kind of inherent self-correcting mechanism within the material itself. Perhaps a natural barrier, preventing those who aren't truly ready or properly attuned from grasping, or maybe misusing the deeper truths. It's a really fascinating assertion of the material's self-contained protection.
That is an extraordinary claim, almost audacious, like you said. How does Grant justify revealing something so potentially potent, especially if it's been hidden for so long? Does he offer any, verification for listeners, or is it just take his word for it?
Well, he contextualizes it very carefully, actually, within a specific lineage. It's really important to understand Grant's position in the wider occult landscape. He doesn't present this work in a vacuum. He identifies himself as a representative of a particular magical order, and he says he was specifically tasked to develop the work of his predecessor, and that predecessor, none other than the infamous Aleister Crowley. And the order is the OTO, the Ordo Templi Orientis. Grant emphasizes that the OTO is founded upon the circle, the goddess, the mother whose child is her symbol. So that establishes a very specific archetypal feminine foundation for the order's structure and its operations. It kind of moves away from more traditionally patriarchal interpretations of spiritual power.
Right, okay. So connecting this to the bigger picture then, Grant asserts that the OTO embodies the true current of extraterrestrial knowledge. That's a pretty mind-bending idea, isn't it? The idea that the deepest wisdom comes from beyond our planet.
It is. And this extraterrestrial current, he says, is intrinsically tied to Thelema, which is Crowley's whole philosophical and magical system, and specifically to two of Crowley's most enigmatic works, Liber 231 and Liber 93.
Okay.
And while Crowley himself revised the rituals of the lower degrees of the OTO during his time as head, Grant notes that these revisions did not alter that structure. He's saying they maintained the core esoteric framework, the original principles, which suggests this deep underlying continuity, like a hidden stream of wisdom flowing through time, despite any surface-level adjustments or, evolutions of the order.
Got it. And Nightside of Eden isn't a standalone book you mentioned. It's part of a larger series.
That's right. It's placed within Grant's larger body of work, specifically his multi-volume Typhonian trilogy. And this trilogy builds directly on Crowley's inspired writings, as Grant puts it. It takes the concepts and magical currents that Crowley began to open up and really expands them into a more complete system perhaps, but definitely darker and more challenging. Central to understanding this whole framework is the concept of eons. Grant, following Crowley, talks about this cosmic shift from the eon of Osiris, representing a previous age, often associated with patriarchal figures, dying gods, and seeing death as a final end, to the present eon of Horus.
Okay, the Eon of Horus,
That's right.
which we're supposedly in now, and that brings a radically different perspective.
Exactly. It focuses on the eternal child, which symbolizes things like independence, creativity, self-realization, and a fundamental reevaluation of life and death. In this new eon, life and death aren't seen as separate or opposing forces anymore. They're seen as continuous phenomena.
Continuous like a cycle.
Pretty much. It's described as day and night in the process of self-enlightenment, implying that the perceived duality of existence, including life and death, is just part of a single ongoing process of spiritual unfolding. And Grant emphasizes that he'd been dedicating, I think says, the past 25 years to clarifying the function of this newly organized order within the context of this shifting eon, trying to make these complex transitions accessible, at least to those seeking this deeper, unifying understanding.
That's a huge shift in worldview. The idea that consciousness itself is evolving through these vast cosmic ages. It completely reshapes how you might view spiritual progress, moving beyond simple good versus evil, or just climbing a ladder towards something more cyclical, more holistic, where even the dark bits are part of enlightenment.
Precisely. It integrates everything, or aims to.
So we've covered the author, his intent, this big context of shifting eons. Now let's get to the core conceptual map he uses, the Tree of Life. Now, for many people familiar with occult ideas, the Tree of Life is, well, it's widely known as this beautiful positive symbol, right? Creation, divine emanation, spiritual ascent, a blueprint of the cosmos, composed of the 10 Sephiroth, these divine emanations or numbers representing different aspects of God or reality, and the 22 paths connecting them. It's generally presented as a key to occult power, both mystically and magically.
And that's certainly true in its, let's say, common interpretation. The tree serves as a framework. Through it, human consciousness comprehends macrocosmic powers in terms of microcosmic values. It lets the microcosm reflect the macrocosm. It's a way to understand the vastness of the universe through our own human experience. However, Grant argues pretty strongly that Western occultism has largely dominated the interpretation, focusing almost exclusively on its positive, upward-moving sort of daytime aspect. And this brings us to the really interesting part, and frankly the unsettling part for some people, the Quffoth.
Ah, yes, the Quffoth. Here's where it gets really interesting, like you said. Most people know the Tree of Life as this positive symbol, but Grant says there's a whole other side to that coin. He states that a significant portion of the tree has been kept out of sight and sedulously ignored. Sedulously ignored, I like that phrase. This hidden aspect is the negative or reverse side, the infernal realm of the Quffoth, which are essentially the world of shells or shadows. And here's the kicker, the really provocative claim. Grant suggests this world of shells or shadows is none other than our world as we know it, implying that our perceived reality, our everyday existence, is in some profound sense the shadow or the shell of something more fundamental.
Which definitely raises a powerful question, right? If our reality is the Quffoth, what does that imply about our perception, our limitations? Grant emphasizes that full magical initiation is not possible without an understanding of the so-called Quffotic paths. He explains that these paths aren't just empty voids or, evil places. They are the shadow of any object illumined by the sun, the negative counterparts to the well-lit highways of Horus on the conventional tree.
So like a photographic negative.
Kind of, yeah. While the familiar paths might be seen as these illuminated routes for spiritual ascent, the cliff author described as a dark web or nocturnal network that also needs to be navigated. And the Qliphoth consists of counterparts in the tunnels of Set that correspond to each of the Sephiroth on the main tree of life. It forms a complete, albeit inverted, mirror structure. The shadow side is just as complex, just as structured as the light side.
Okay, so you have the 10 Sephiroth on the conventional tree, generally understood as divine emanations of the Absolute, representing different aspects of consciousness, creation, universal principles. They move from Kether, the ultimate unity, maybe nothingness, down through various stages to Malkuth, which is the kingdom or manifestation, basically our physical world. These are the familiar, well-charted territories of spiritual ascent and understanding for many.
Right. But in stark contrast, their Qliphothic counterparts aren't just negative reflections. Grant describes them as power zones that are explicitly dangerous territory. And he issues this profound warning. He says, at the outset, I would remind those who feel that such an exploration had better not be made, that one cannot begin this initiation or journey inward as one begins one's ascent from Malkuth.
Okay, so you can't just dip your toe in the same way.
Exactly. It's not a casual caution. It suggests that approaching the Qliphoth is fundamentally different from traditional spiritual paths. It's not an ascent from the familiar, but a plunge into the unknown. A journey that demands a particular kind of readiness, maybe a certain kind of courage. The averse regions, as he calls them, are precisely for those who might typically fear that such an exploration had better not be made, implying that true initiation requires confronting and integrating these feared aspects of reality.
And right at the heart of this Qliphotic map, almost literally, is death. It's not one of the 10 conventional Sephiroth, but it's a critical power zone on the tree. Grant calls it a hole in space or form, a non-Sephira. It's the point of connection between knowledge, which is Darath itself, and understanding, Baina, the sphere just above it, which makes it a kind of liminal space, a gateway between different modes of being and knowing, a crossroads of consciousness.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, death isn't just some abstract point on a diagram. It's presented as a paradoxical, very transformative experience. It's the gate of the abyss, where the nexus of illusion and glamour resides. And yet, paradoxically, it's also where the veil of Isis is lifted.
So confronting illusion by seeing through it.
Something like that. It implies that confronting death means confronting the very nature of illusion itself, recognizing that what we perceive as solid reality might be, well, a grand deception. Furthermore, it's explicitly stated that death was the great illusion of the previous eon, the eon of Osiris. But in the current eon of Horus, which we talked about, death and life are seen as continuous phenomena. Death, therefore, becomes this crucial point of transition, signifying the dissolution of old illusions, like the finality of death, and the recognition of a more unified, continuous reality, where the perceived end is merely another beginning. It's a place where the illusion of separation, particularly the separation between life and death, is profoundly challenged and, ideally, ultimately dissolved.
Okay, that sets the stage. So let's dig into some of these core Nightside concepts that Grant unpacks within this really complex framework. First up is the light that is not. That name itself is intriguing. It directly challenges our usual understanding of consciousness and reality, doesn't it?
It really does. Grant explains that cosmic consciousness, basically the totality of awareness that pervades everything, manifests in humanity as sentience. This sentience then concentrates itself into an individualized center of awareness and splits into subject and object.
Okay, so like a single light source breaking into countless individual beams, and each beam thinks it's separate.
That's a good analogy. Each being perceiving itself as separate from the others, and the world as something distinct from itself. And the profound insight here, according to Grant, is that true knowledge, or gnosis, isn't about gaining more facts or information. It's about unlearning the illusion of separation, dissolving the ego to reintegrate with that unified consciousness.
So the ego is the illusion.
Fundamentally, yes. Grant radically suggests that the ego, this individualized center of awareness we identify with, is an illusion. Consequently, the phenomenal world, our physical reality, which he equates with Malkuth on the Tree of Life, is also seen as merely an illusion. The true gnosis is a return to the principle of consciousness itself, which involves a loss of awareness as we commonly understand it, a dissolution of the ego leading to a reintegration of the lost principle. Within this framework, darkness is absence of light. It's not some evil force, but a representation of non-being or primal potential, something essential for ultimate self-realization. He also hints at figures he calls the Black Brothers who might resist this reintegration, embodying the resistance to confronting these illusions.
Okay, fascinating. Then we have the Door of Death, which you clarified earlier isn't about literal physical death, but a profound transformation, described as a key to occult power.
Exactly. It's deeply connected to Death and the Qliphoth, and Grant explicitly states that this gnosis is often facilitated or characterized by energies of a predominantly psychosexual nature.
Psychosexual. Does that mean literal sex magic or something more energetic?
It can encompass both, but it often refers more fundamentally to the deepest, most primal energetic currents within the human organism, the creative and generative forces that have the power to break down the illusion of separation. There's rich symbolism here, too. The bee, for instance, represented by the Hebrew letter kaf. Its numerical value links to the serpent, which is a classic symbol of primal wisdom and transformation. And you have symbols like honey, often associated with the male essence, and bees with the female essence, used to represent sexual unity on a deeply esoteric, energetic level.
And this Door of Death connects to other concepts.
Yes, what's really interesting here is how it links to the Red Dragon current, described as a powerful esoteric force, and its deep connection to Aleister Crowley's really important text, the Book of the Law. So the Door of Death becomes this transformative passage, often invoked, Grant suggests, through specific psychosexual magical practices, aimed at transcending conventional consciousness and accessing deeper hidden currents of power beyond our everyday perception. It's not about an ending, but a profound reorientation of consciousness, facilitated by a specific kind of internal and external energetic union.
Okay, moving on. We encounter the concept of beyond the pylon of the pit. This sounds quite dramatic. It refers to a process of redemption or maybe revivifying the mummy in Amenta, which you said is an Egyptian magical term.
That's right. And think of the mummy here not as a literal corpse, but as a symbolic representation of the soul or the spiritual self. The self that has become inert or trapped within the confines of physical reality and now needs to be, well, reanimated, woken up. And Dath, that non-sephira, the abyss we discussed, is identified in this context as the ego or soul, psyche. It's the point where this inert self must pass through.
So the pylon is like another gate, a checkpoint.
Essentially, yeah, a gateway that leads to outer inner space where the soul is released by the eight-headed serpent, which is quite an image.
Eight-headed serpent. Wow.
It describes this profound journey through different states of consciousness, moving beyond our ordinary perception into deeper, more subtle realms. The source specifically outlines these states: waking consciousness, Jagrat, dreaming Swapna, and deep sleep, Sushupti. It suggests that the journey into and beyond the abyss through death involves navigating these subtle realms of consciousness, confronting illusion, and ultimately achieving a state of spiritual liberation where the ego is dissolved and the soul is freed from conventional limitations, truly expanding into inner and outer space.
Okay, next, we have a really evocative term, Typhonian teratomas. These are described as monstrous forms, entities subsumed under mythological symbols representing the elementals of the Qliphoth.
Right. They're not just abstract ideas. Grant presents them as concrete, albeit maybe non-physical, beings or forces that inhabit these shadow realms. And even more intriguing, they're identified as resulting from a pre-human magical experiment and derived from primitive women, which hints at this ancient primordial origin story that definitely challenges conventional narratives.
A pre-human magical experiment.
That's wild. How does he connect that to mythology?
Well, this is where Grant brilliantly weaves in ancient myths and accounts, giving them this specific occult interpretation. He describes these teratomas as the sons of God and the daughters of men, directly linking them to the biblical narrative of the Nephilim, but with his unique occult twist.
Ah, the Nephilim, okay.
Yeah, and he cites Berossus, an ancient Babylonian writer, and his account of creation, suggesting this deep, forgotten lineage for these entities. Their primary role within Grant's system is apparently to perpetuate the degradation of the tree, leading to a misinterpretation of the tree of life itself. They kind of embody the distortions and inversions of primal forces, effectively keeping humanity bound within the shadow reality of the Qliphoth through misperception and false knowledge, perpetuating the grand illusion, you could say.
And this degradation seems to tie into the next concept, idols of Merodach. This section references the rabbinical tradition of man's fall into matter, connecting the Qliphoth to the biblical story of Adam and Eve. Exactly. It delves into the symbolism of woman, Eve, and man, Adam, in relation to both the tree of life and its nightside counterpart. The source notes that these two primal elements, Adam and Eve, provide the key to a magical complex that was reared on the polarity of the sexes, implying that the fundamental separation of genders, or maybe the misuse of that polarity, played a role in the fall into material reality.
And he uses numbers again here, doesn't he? Like with Eve and Golgotha?
He does. What's fascinating here is how Grant connects these seemingly disparate ideas through this complex web of numerical and symbolic associations. Gematria, Qabalistic numerology. The number 64, for instance, is the numerical value for Golgotha, the place of the skull, often associated with death and transformation, and Grant specifically associates 64 with Eve. Yeah, it implies this deeper hidden significance to these foundational figures of human origin, suggesting that the very fall contained within it the seeds of transformation. Furthermore, Merodach itself is linked to the Gorgon from Greek myth into Thelemic mysteries. It shows this intricate web of connections Grant makes across various esoteric traditions, all pointing toward a profound esoteric understanding of creation, fall, and the necessary interplay of masculine and feminine principles to navigate these hidden realms.
Okay, speaking of primal figures, let's talk about the divine ape. Here, the Hindu goddess Kali, often associated with time, change, destruction, is identified as the idea of time and of chaos, and quite strikingly as the divine ape.
Yeah, it's not just a comparison, it's an identification. It connects these ancient deities to a primal, pre-human state of consciousness. This divine ape is also explicitly linked to the Typhonian teratoma, as we just discussed, suggesting their shared origin in this pre-human magical experiment, maybe a time before conventional humanity existed as we know it. The circle of the sun is also defined as the magical circle in this context, grounding the concept within ritual space like a boundary or container for these powerful primal forces.
A zoomorphic mirror of the universe. What does that mean exactly?
Well, the vulture ape is described that way. It suggests that this primal ape-like form reflects fundamental cosmic principles, a raw, unrefined aspect of creation, perhaps. The Egyptian word keke, which means not yet, is also associated with the ape, implying a state of unmanifested potential or incomplete evolution, a kind of pre-creational chaos. Grant further cites an Egyptian tradition which claims the ape is descended from the original Adam, which radically reworks traditional creation narratives, doesn't it? Proposing a much deeper, older lineage for these primal forms of consciousness and their connection to the very origins of humanity, hinting at earlier, perhaps non-human evolutionary stages that shaped our current reality.
Okay, then there's the negative way. This concept seems to delve into beings known as the giants or fallen ones, Nephilim again, and also abortions. It also connects to the confusion of tongues and the builders of the Tower of Babel. These mythological events often seen as divine punishments or failures.
Right, but here they're presented not just as historical or mythological references, but as embodying a specific magical current or pathway, the negative way. And the objective of this negative way is tied to the rediscovery of the word, a lost key or principle, and the activation or reconstitution of the subtle body within a menta, that Egyptian magical term for the underworld or hidden dimension of consciousness.
What does it mean to rediscover a word in this context? Is it like a magic word?
Probably not a literal word in the way we usually think of it, more like a key to power, a fundamental vibration or principle that can unlock hidden potentials. Grant ties this conceptually to the number 210, which in Qabala is significant for Nephilim, but also, interestingly, for abortion and confusion, and importantly, the tree of life itself.
So these negative concepts are woven into the tree itself.
That's what the numerology suggests, that these seemingly negative aspects are intrinsically part of the fabric of existence, or at least the map of it, not simply external evils to be avoided. Furthermore, the king and the lover from Aleister Crowley's cryptic text, The Book of Lies, are mentioned in relation to the negative way, hinting at the complex, often paradoxical nature of the transformative journey involved, where perceived falls or deviations can paradoxically lead to deeper truths and unexpected forms of power.
Right? Okay, this deep dive also brings us to adumbrations of Mont. Adumbrations. Shadows or hints, right?
Exactly. And this section explicitly connects to the writings of H.P. Blavatsky, a towering figure in modern esotericism, founder of Theosophy. It emphasizes concepts like pre-human evolutions and extraterrestrial intelligence, which really reinforces the idea that Grant's system draws from multiple diverse streams of occult thought. extending beyond just Crowley to earlier esoteric traditions that posited an ancient non-human lineage for much of humanity's knowledge.
Like Blavatsky's Book of Gene.
Precisely. The concept of the Book of Gene, which Blavatsky claimed was this ancient cosmic text revealing the origins of the universe and humanity, is highly relevant here. Grant views it as potentially the most complete transmission of the direct forces it represents.
And Ma'at herself. She's described as the counterpart of Thoth.
Yeah, Thoth being the Egyptian god of wisdom, writing, divine order, Ma'at is presented as the goddess of intelligence, which suggests maybe a balancing or opposing force to purely intellectual understanding. Perhaps more intuitive cosmic intelligence. But then this section contains a truly surprising, almost chilling assertion that the Qliphothic energy, this dark shadow current, was somehow activated or already present into this planet during the first nuclear explosion.
Wow, that connects ancient magic to modern physics in a pretty startling way.
It's an astonishing claim, linking ancient esoteric concepts to modern cataclysmic events, suggesting that these hidden forces were not only intensified by human actions on a grand scale, but were perhaps even primed for manifestation by such events, implying a deep, maybe dangerous connection between the unseen realms and our physical world and its history.
Okay, carrying on with these really intriguing concepts, we come to the vulture's mouth. This refers to the word of the Aeon of Ma'at, and Grant states that this word was initiated through extraterrestrial intelligences.
So again, that idea of knowledge or power originating from beyond our planet is absolutely central to Grant's cosmic vision, indicating this continuous flow of wisdom, perhaps, from non-human sources. IPSOS is mentioned as a sigil, also known as the same mouth, which hints at a continuity or maybe a paradoxical unity in expression, like the primal utterance of creation, or maybe destruction, comes from a singular unified source, even if it manifests in diverse ways.
And there's that psychosexual element again.
Yes, what's truly striking here is the explicit mention of the vagina and the phallus as significant in occult sexual psychology, directly connecting these abstract concepts of cosmic utterance and transformation to human physicality and sexual energy as a profound magical force. The vulture itself is also a symbolic representation of the mouth, reinforcing this idea of primal expression and consumption, a devouring and regenerating principle. Furthermore, the concept of time-space distortion is linked to the inner plane and the sigils of Austin Osman Spare.
Spare, another big influence.
Huge influence, yeah. Spare explored radical techniques of sigil magic and altered states. This implies that through these practices and concepts, one can potentially manipulate or perceive reality beyond conventional time and space, accessing deeper inner dimensions of existence where the rules of normal reality are suspended.
Okay, and finally, within this set of key concepts, we have Typhonian totems of the Tantras.
Right. This section focuses on what Grant calls the formula of creative vortex, which is described quite practically as a method of dream control. This really highlights the practical operative side of this knowledge, moving beyond just theory into active manipulation of consciousness, particularly in the dream state.
Why the focus on dreams?
Well, it emphasizes the profound influence of dream on the waking state, suggesting that our dream experiences can directly impact our perceived reality, and it aims at achieving the transmuting light of magical consciousness, a state where ordinary consciousness is transformed by contact with these deeper, often dreamlike realities.
And how does Tantra fit in?
The source mentions a physiological parallel to yogic techniques, drawing this direct link between Western occultism and Eastern spiritual practices, specifically Tantra. It suggests that the bodily disciplines and energy manipulations found in Tantra and yoga are mirrored or have analogous effects within Grant's system, serving as practical methods for accessing these deeper states. Ultimately, the practice is described as producing the aesthetic result of Spare's sexual magic, which again emphasizes the fusion of consciousness, bodily experience, and even artistic expression in achieving profound magical and spiritual outcomes. It points to a path where creativity, altered states, and deep magical work are all intricately intertwined, aiming to manifest the unseen into the seen.
Wow. Okay, we've laid out this incredibly complex theoretical landscape of Grant's Nightside and its unsettling core ideas. We've explored concepts like the light that is not, the door of death, Typhonian teratomas, all hinting at a reality far more complex, far more shadowed than we typically perceive. But how does one actually navigate this hidden realm? You mentioned earlier, Grant goes further. He provides this radical map of specific pathways, what he calls the tunnels of Set, each a distinct, challenging journey inhabited by unique entities.
That's right. This is the focus of part 2 of Nightside of Eden, moving from the overarching philosophy to the, let's say, granular experience of these shadow dimensions.
Is there guidance on how to use this map?
Well, the source material, specifically a text called Liber CXXXXY, apparently describes the secret rubric for navigating these tunnels, indicating that there are specific instructions, maybe rituals, associated with them, implying they are definitely not to be approached lightly or unprepared. Crucially, there are 22 tunnels, directly correlating to the 22 paths of the conventional tree, and their numbers correspond to the tarot trumps, which adds another layer of symbolic mapping and potential guidance for the practitioner.
Okay, that makes sense. And the dark brother concept comes up here.
Yes, it's key here, representing figures who view the universe through a particular lens, perhaps seeing it as an objective reality that must be mastered or controlled, contrasting with those who see it as purely subjective or illusory. And Death the Abyss is specifically identified as the abode of the Black Brothers, particularly when viewed from the sphere of Malkuth, Earth, our manifested world, which reinforces that idea that what we perceive as normal reality is deeply intertwined with these shadow realms, and these brothers are key players within them. Then there's Karanzan, numerical value 333, identified as chaos in the sense of no word, a potent Typhonian form of the beast, representing the raw, undifferentiated energy of the abyss that needs to be confronted or navigated, a force that precedes even language itself.
And central to understanding these tunnels, and really a lot of Grant's work, is the concept of Qabalah. You mentioned it briefly before. It's introduced as a fundamental fluidic fire or cosmic power.
Exactly. Think of it as a vital, potent energy, a living current that flows through all of existence. The source explicitly identifies it with the spiritual current of the human organism, and it plays a particularly significant role in tantric sexual magic. This is crucial because it connects these vast cosmic and spiritual ideas directly to the human body and its primal energies, suggesting that the path to the night side isn't just intellectual, but deeply embodied and energetic.
And it has a psychophysical nature.
Yes, the source explicitly mentions its psychophysical sexual nature, highlighting how physical and spiritual energies are considered inseparable in this system. Qabalah isn't just an abstract force. It's presented as the very essence, the womb and birthplace of all manifested life, identified with the black goddess Chemisis Nuisis. This suggests that this fluidic fire is the generative force behind all creation, both light and shadow, and mastering it or learning to work with it is key to navigating the night side and achieving profound magical and spiritual transformations. It's presented as the very substance of existence, a living current within and beyond us, waiting to be recognized and directed.
Okay, now let's take a glimpse into some of these specific tunnels and the fascinating, often unsettling entities associated with them, as Grant details them. It's important to remember, as you said, these aren't just mythological figures in his system. They represent actual energetic currents or states of consciousness that a practitioner might encounter on these nightside paths. First up, we have Amprodias, attributed to the 11th path. This path is tied to the element air and its negative aspect as a demon or shadow entity. The sigil details sound very specific, meant for ritual visualization, connected to profound, often unpredictable revelations.
That's the core of Amprodias, yeah. Primal, creative utterance, and unpredictability. It's often manifested symbolically as a gaping mouth typical of the uterus which utters the word, symbolizing the very origin of expression from a deep, feminine generative power. Amprodias is also associated with the raw power of the thunderbolt and with sexual magic, suggesting an overwhelming and transformative force. Encountering this energy, Grant suggests, can lead to experiences as unpredictable as the intellect of Crowley, manifesting as an unseen current or facilitating deep, often unsettling, insights and forms of divination. It really represents the chaotic, yet potentially revelatory aspect of air and thought.
Okay. Next, we explore Barakial, assigned to the 12th path. This tunnel is attributed to Mercury communication, intellect, but here we're exploring its shadow side, hinting at concealed or maybe distorted knowledge.
Exactly. Barakial symbolism is quite striking. It's often depicted with two swords with inturned blades and a ghostly face, and it's described as the shadow of Thoth, the Egyptian god of wisdom and magic, which suggests a distortion or inversion of conventional wisdom, leading to hidden or dark forms of knowledge. Its nature is characterized by a sweet smell of the ruach, the breath of spirit, and a whirling scent that impregnates the virgin, tying it to creation and mystical impregnation, but maybe in a way that reduces or obfuscates direct spiritual light. This path, Grant warns, can lead to something called atasaphasia, which he defines as monstrous speech or incomprehensible communication.
Monstrous speech.
Yeah, but also potentially to thrills beyond the veil of the void, implying experiences that are both disturbing in their breakdown of normal communication and maybe profoundly transcendent in their access to non-ordinary realities. It's really about facing the breakdown of conventional meaning itself.
Following that, we come to Gargophius, the entity associated with the 13th path, described as a shadow guardian connected to the lunar Kala, emphasizing its ties to the hidden, intuitive, primal feminine forces, subconscious, ancient power, that sort of thing.
Precisely. And the manifestation of Gargophius is primordial and incredibly potent. It's identified with primeval Typhon, that monstrous chaotic figure from Greek mythology, and chillingly with the mother of Set, and even, paradoxically, the first male.
Wow, that's ancient.
It suggests a truly primordial, chaotic origin for this entity, predating conventional creation narratives. It's apparently of supreme importance in the draconian cult, hinting at its centrality in paths focused on serpentine or primal energy. Experiences encountered on this path are said to include monstrous vibrations, interactions with unseen entities, manifestations within sexual dream, and unnatural luminous phenomena, indicating a whole range of uncanny and often unsettling encounters that challenge our sense of reality and the nature of existence itself. It represents the chaotic, foundational energy from which much of the night side seems to spring.
Okay, moving along this night side map, we encounter Dagdagil, which is called the 14th path, or more tellingly perhaps, the whore. This path's energy is deeply connected to Venus love, sexuality, but here in its night side manifestation, it explores the more uninhibited, maybe even transgressive aspects of these energies.
Yes, the symbolism of Dagdagil is deeply rooted in Venusian energies and the manifestation of Nut, the goddess of infinite space, from Crowley's Thelema, hinting at boundless potential and desire. Its imagery includes the Delph, which means door, and the fire snake, a symbol of potent, transformative energy. The experiences encountered on this path are described as voluptuous gnosis, which points to a form of mystical knowledge gained through intense sensual or sexual experience. It's tied to sexual magic, unrealized love, and the concept of the virginal womb, embodying a primal, untamed sexual beauty. The connection to Hadit, representing union, and the explicit term whore, further emphasizes the transformative power of divine, uninhibited sexuality within this system. It challenges conventional notions of purity and desire to access profound spiritual insight. It's about finding spiritual liberation, perhaps, through embracing sensual reality in its fullness.
Okay, and finally, for our specific glimpses today into the tunnels of Set, we have Kirgesiax dominating the 21st path. This path is primarily influenced by Jupiter expansion, abundance. But here it's horned sentineled by Kirgesiax, hinting at a darker, more primal manifestation of these forces, maybe an abundance that borders on the monstrous or overwhelming.
That's a good way to put it. Kirgesiax's manifestation is striking. It's often depicted as a horned cross mounted on a pole with 3 caudiform appendages, symbolizing the horned barb of Set, which Grant identifies explicitly as the spermatozoon.
The sperm set.
Yeah. Directly linking the entity to primal generative life force, but in a raw, almost aggressive form. This connection to the very essence of creation, seen through this Typhonian lens, is deeply significant. Experiences connected to Kirgesiax are said to involve projections of Pluto, Jupiter, Venus, all intertwined with a sexual meaning and the attainment of divine love, suggesting a powerful and transformative encounter with cosmic and personal energies that can be both overwhelming and potentially lead to profound spiritual unity through the integration of these potent primal forces. It's really about confronting the raw power of creation and life itself.
And there you have it. Wow. A journey into the vast, incredibly complex, and often deeply unsettling vision of Kenneth Grant's Nightside of Eden. From the esoteric connections to Aleister Crowley and the OTO, to the intricate mapping of the Qabalistic tree of life and its hidden shadow, the Qfoth, and then through the chilling yet profoundly symbolic tunnels of Set and their inhabiting entities, what Grant presents is, without a doubt, a radical alternative to conventional views of reality and consciousness, arguing that true understanding requires venturing into the unseen, the unpleasant, the forbidden, maybe even the terrifying.
Yeah, it definitely raises an important question for you, the listener. After our deep dive into these sources, what stands out to you? Perhaps it's that audacious idea that true knowledge requires venturing into the unseen or unpleasant aspects of reality, embracing the shadow side of existence to truly comprehend the light. Or maybe it's just the sheer intricacy of how different esoteric traditions are. I mean, Egyptian magic, Tantra, Qabalah are all woven together by Grant to form this unique, cohesive tapestry of thought. offering an alternative map of the cosmos and human consciousness, one that really demands a reconsideration of what we think is truly real.
It's certainly a lot to ponder. I mean, how does the exploration of these nightside concepts, even if you take them as symbolic or metaphorical, how does that challenge or expand our understanding of human consciousness and its potential, both the light and the shadow aspects? How might engaging with hidden knowledge systems like these reshape our perception of reality itself, prompting us to question what is truly real and what might simply be another shell or illusion waiting to be unveiled? And maybe what might it mean for your own journey of self-discovery to simply acknowledge the existence of these profound, often unsettling, hidden pathways of knowledge?